Welcome to the final part, Part 5 in my Antifa Exposed series. In Part 1 of this series, I reported on Antifa's J20 call to action. In Part 2, I delved into how to identify Antifa on the ground and some of the more common tactics they employ. In Part 3, I reported how Antifa have infiltrated Silicon Valley and the federal government. And in Part 4, I reported on how Hillary became one of Antifa's public faces and how she's funneling money through front groups to Antifa. This final part will be partially an epilogue and provide information helpful to targets of Antifa and other left-wing discrimination. While I disagree with elements of white nationalism who agitate for an American ethno-state, I do so for the same reason that I oppose Antifa and left-wing targeting of white Americans. It's because it's racial discrimination. However, I've not seen any independent evidence of modern white nationalist organizations calling for violence against minorities because they're minorities. Yet, we have seen all over social media and mainstream news outlets how left-wing groups such as Antifa, mainstream media personalities, elements of Silicon Valley, and even left-wing elected politicians speak out in support of racially motivated violence and unlawful discrimination against American nationalist Caucasians based on the color of their skin and their national origin. To be clear, discriminating against and unlawfully targeting American Caucasians is both national origin discrimination and racial discrimination as defined by federal laws. You see, racial discrimination isn't power plus privilege like social media communists would have you believe. That definition is a communist teaching. You see, the communist social justice movement promotes communism, not civil rights. They oppose free speech, freedom of religion, and American civil right to own a firearm, just to name a few. This is why, whenever you read Antifa or any other social justice literature, they never focus on civil rights. It's because communism and civil rights are not only mutually exclusive, they are diametrically opposed. While I have a video planned to dive deeper into this subject, it's not this one. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So on January 21st, 2019, a day after the January 20 actions were supposed to happen, It's Going Down, the Antifa website run by BAM, By Any Means Necessary, highlighted actions across the United States that occurred on J20. Thankfully, this was a huge flop, unlike 2018 and 2017. However, that didn't stop the violence. On February 4th, 2019, Zero Hedge reports, body cam captures militant Antifa shot in the head by cops after pulling a gun. Now, I'm not actually going to read this article, but I will post it in the description like I normally do so that you can review it yourself. But this Antifa member, he pulled a gun on police at his children's school, and they shot him in self-defense. And earlier, Antifa confessed to an attack against a German populist MP, and it looks like they tried to assassinate him. This is the textbook definition of terrorism. However, it doesn't stop there. You see, tomorrow, on February 9th, there's going to be a Patriot Prayer at the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington. And Antifa has called for an autonomous action against this Patriot Prayer at the University of Washington. They state, on Saturday, February 9th, University of Washington College Republicans, along with Joey Gibson of Patriot Prayer, will be holding an anniversary event for their Freedom Rally that took place at UW last year. Joey will be speaking at 3:30 p.m., and then the floor will open up to questions for both him and members of the University of Washington College Republicans. This event is ticketed and inside Goin 301, a room adjacent to the quad. The campus is beautiful at this time of year, and we suggest taking a stroll around it to see for yourself. The UWCR is a group that has brought such speakers as Milo Yiannopoulos to campus and hosted Build the Wall events in Red Square. These people do not need much introductions. Their actions are well chronicled and their aims are clear. As anti-fascist and anarchists, our strategy is to no platform, not dialogue or competing protests, or speaking truth to a power that is never and will never care. So really the takeaway here is this. Antifa's sole goal, their sole purpose for showing up to this event, is to violate the University of Washington's college Republicans' right to free speech, guaranteed under the Constitution of the United States. Then 2 days ago, Richmond.com reported Virginia Capitol Police Sergeant placed on leave after Antifa group posts allegation about him. They state in pertinent part, on its blog Tuesday, Anti-Fascists of the Seven Hills, a leftist self-described militant group, posted Officer Stam's name, links to social media accounts in his name, and a description of his tattoos and interests listed under those accounts. The activists on the blog post said Stam's social media activity suggests he follows the Astru Folk Assembly. The blog says Stam is friends with people who claim to be associated with the group, which the Southern Poverty Law Center describes as a hate group, blending Northern European paganism and ethnocentrism. Now, interestingly enough, I actually did some research on Asatru Folk Assembly. It turns out the Asatru Folk Assembly, the AFA, is a U.S. headquartered but international Volkish Asatru organization with chapters worldwide, founded by Stephen A. McNallen in 1994. The AFA is recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit religious organization or church and is headquartered in Grass Valley, California. In 2018, the Southern Poverty Law Center added the Asatru Folk Assembly to its list of hate groups. So here's the problem. In the United States, we have freedom of religion guaranteed under the United States Constitution. In the United States, freedom of religion is a constitutionally protected right in the religion clauses of the First Amendment. Freedom of religion is also closely associated with separation of church and state. So here's the problem that I have with this. Because the Capitol Police has taken disciplinary action against this police officer for his possible religious affiliation, that not only violates his First Amendment right to freedom of religion, but it's considered unlawful discrimination by the EEOC. They state, religious discrimination involves treating a person, an applicant or employee, unfavorably because of his or her religious beliefs. The law protects not only people who belong to traditional organized religions, such as Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism, but also others who have sincerely held religious, ethical, or moral beliefs. Religious discrimination can also involve treating someone differently because that person is married to or associated with, that seems familiar, an individual of a particular religion. The law forbids discrimination when it comes to any aspect of employment, including hiring, firing, pay, job assignments, promotions, layoffs, trainings, fringe benefits, and any other term or condition of employment. It is illegal to harass a person because of his or her religion. Now, I would also say that even if this person wasn't following the Asatru Folk Assembly, because he's associated with them, it is still discrimination and unlawful under United States federal civil rights law. Now, if you've been watching this channel, you'd know that recently I've actually been doing a video series about how people are fighting back against outrage mobs who unlawfully harass them the same way that this police officer is being unlawfully harassed by Antifa and the unlawful actions taken by his police department against him. And what they're doing is they are suing these people into the Stone Ages for their unlawful discrimination. Now, I've not only outlined 2 lawsuits against the Southern Poverty Law Center for this exact thing, but I've also reported on the fact that over 60 different religious organizations are talking about coordinating lawsuits all across the United States against Southern Poverty Law Center and organizations like them for unlawful discrimination and being unlawfully targeted and harassed. Now, while Antifa is a shadow of what it once was, it's still dangerous. Less than 20 terrorists on 9/11 killed thousands. Small terrorist cells throughout history have caused mass destruction all over the world. Antifa is no different, nor should they be underestimated. As we discovered earlier in this series, what Antifa lacks in numbers, they make up for in extremism and massive amounts of left-wing establishment funding. Thankfully, my first video about Antifa in this series released approximately a month prior to the planned January 20th, 2019 nationwide riots, went viral, and it was viewed over 100,000 times. After it was released, I received multiple behind-the-scenes confirmations that local and federal law enforcement agencies were preparing for Antifa action, and many of the facts contained in my videos mirrored their concerns as well. Antifa's main tactic is to hide in legitimate protests and mingle with protesters. Then they riot when the time is right. Without coordinated activist events to provide cover for the Antifa rioting, Antifa stayed home. While I have no evidence of it, I personally believe that another reason Antifa stayed home is because they were tipped off from infiltrators within the law enforcement community itself that agencies were forewarned and prepared for Antifa violence. I also believe this acted as a deterring factor as well, especially after coordinating successful mass riots in 2017 and 2018. Not only is Antifa a terrorist organization, they also operate as a criminal cartel, possibly coordinating with drug cartels in their human trafficking efforts south of the border. Antifa has admitted to illegal immigrant human trafficking across the southwest border into the United States, which is why I'm concerned about this. This alone should be enough for law enforcement to go after them. Thankfully, more and more everyday Americans are speaking out against Antifa and the left-wing hypocrites who support them. Today, Americans of conscience who've been victims of Antifa and other left-wing outrage mobs are fighting back in court and elsewhere to stop this systemic campaign of unlawful discrimination and violations of American civil rights. And my guess is that this is just the beginning. I'm DDJ, and this is your dose of misandry today.